Why is IFS a little bit hard to give over? So the reason for that is that it's really an experiential modality. And what that means is you really feel it in sessions and as you utilize it. And because it's something that you really experience, sometimes like words just don't do it justice. Hi, thank you so much for joining. We're going to be talking about IFS. I will give some other things that I do so that if you want to write in a question, you can. Happy for everybody to ask any questions that they want. Okay, let's get started. Okay, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. I know it's not the easiest time of day, so I really appreciate you taking out the time. My name is Caryn Guttman-Weber. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I work out of the 5 towns, but I also work on Zoom. I am going to try to follow this request of pinning, but I don't think I figured that out. Okay. Anyway, I work in the 5 towns and on Zoom, and I just want to give a little intro to what I do, what I work in, so that if you have any questions on any of those topics, you can ask them. And then most of the questions I received were about IFS, which is a modality I practice in. So we're going to get into what that is. Okay, so things that I do, I am a trauma certified therapist. I utilize internal family systems. It is a modality used for trauma therapy, but it doesn't have to be for trauma therapy, but it is a modality that really works well for trauma. I also work with couples and families. I studied at the Ackerman Institute for Couples and Families. I also work a lot with people who are dating, and I utilize the attachment theory a lot for relationships, whether that's dating, marriage, or at any point. I also work with teenagers a lot. That just happens to be the groups of people that I've come across. Okay, so today we're going to talk mostly about IFS, I believe, although again, I'm looking out for comments, and you are welcome to ask on any of those topics. Okay, so IFS is internal family systems, and it was created by someone named Dr. Richard Schwartz. It has a really intuitive component, but Dr. Richard Schwartz came up with the modality and how to use it in a therapeutic way. I'm going to be very honest and transparent. It's hard to give over exactly what IFS is. Someone asked me in the questions, what is a good book to read? No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz, I think, is a really helpful book to read. Why is IFS a little bit hard to give over? So the reason for that is that it's really an experiential modality. And what that means is you really feel it in sessions and as you utilize it. And because it's something that you really experience, sometimes like words just don't do it justice, I find. Like what happens in a session is so unique with each client and so interesting and so really about that connection and that moment that I just find that words don't do it justice. But of course, it's really important that we explain things so that people become interested and want to read a book like No Bad Part. Okay, so what are some concepts that are important to understand in IFS? So to me, the first concept that's really important to understand are what are these parts, right? We talk about these parts, the book is called No Bad Parts. What does that mean? So the parts are really our emotions and these different emotions and reactions that we have and what they are inside of us, because our belief is it's an internal family system. There is a family of emotions and experiences inside of each person, and they are each person's internal family and they work as a system. So these parts are emotions that hold our experiences and generally traumatic or difficult experiences that we've been through, and they actually hold the experience, and they each take a different emotion and a different idea. So let me explain it in a way that we can understand. An example I once gave is if a child spills milk, right? Now, 3-year-old spills milk in their home and their mom reacts and says, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. Oh no, it spilled. And now the child becomes scared. Oh no, I did something. And my mom became really scared, became really angry, and I'm scared of that reaction. So I hold within me this experience of spilling the milk, and I hold this scared feeling. And now, perhaps as a way of dealing with this experience, I'm terrified of spilling. I might not remember what happened when I'm 3, but what I know, what I take with me is we don't spill. So what's interesting is that a part will speak this way. Do not spill, right? It becomes And one way we say, how do we know that we're in a part where we're experiencing part-like behavior, is because we're feeling very black and white. Do not. It is not right to spill. It's right or it's wrong. And what that means is I can only see things right in the black and white. It's right or it's wrong, it's good or it's bad. And the part is doing this. We might be like, why am I so afraid of spilling? People spill, like other people don't freak out about this. But I had this experience. I was 3 years old. I was terrified. It was very scary to me to spill. And this part, and what I love about IFS is the way of looking at things is this part wants to help me. It doesn't want me to ever be in that situation again where I spill and now I'm terrified or I feel bad about myself. So I won't spill, because at 3 years old, what I was able to put together was that was not a good action. Don't do it. That action leads to being afraid. I don't want to be afraid. So this part and all of our parts, all of our emotions, all of our experiences that created emotions, that created these parts that hold these experiences are just saying to us, I don't want that to happen again. I don't want us to be in that situation. I want to protect you. Someone wrote in, it's kind of like saying I'm feeling scared versus I am scared. Right, so a part of us, exactly, the speak that we use in the therapy, which is so important, is a part of me is scared. The part of me that witnessed that experience and holds the difficulty of that experience for me, that trauma, which maybe doesn't seem traumatic, but when you're 3 years old and your mom is yelling at you, big person screaming at me for something I don't even know I did, scary, really scary. So a part of me, yes, a part of me is feeling scared. Not all of me, a part of me. And that's a really important, thank you, Sarah, I believe, for pointing it out. It's a really important thing to notice in IFS is a part of me feels this way. Other parts have no clue that happened, so they're not feeling that way. But they, again, have their own experiences. And I can give a lot of examples, but it seems like people are understanding, so I'm gonna move on a little bit, but feel free again to ask. But basically, our emotions come up in this way, in this very strong black and white, yes, no, intense way to say, I want to protect you. I don't want that which I remember, that which hurt us, to happen again. So I'm going to protect you by being like, don't do that. No. Or yes, you must do that. We have to do that. So that's kind of how we experience our parts. And really in subtle ways, we're feeling this all the time. Whenever it feels like I need to do this, I need to do that. That's parts language. I need to do that. I have to go do that right now. I have to. That black and white language, when we start getting used to it, we start realizing it's parts. And I'm going to explain momentarily that there's something else that's not parts, that's also a part of us, a piece of us, and it doesn't speak that way. So it's just in IFS a lot about noticing where is this desire, this need coming from. And again, it's not ever that parts are bad. No bad parts. He couldn't have made a better title to the book because it's so helpful. And when we think of it this way, these parts are the age of the experiences they've had. So that like this scared part will have had other experiences at 7 and 9 and 11, but it stays 3 years old because that's when it was created. And it really does stay that age. And we notice that sometimes there is a youthful way when we need certain things. It almost feels very basic. It's youthful because we've had that need for a very long time because a part was created when we were very young and it stays that young. It will collect more experiences, but it will stay that young. So it's an interesting thing. It's hard to understand, but basically there are different parts inside of us that are different ages. And it means that there's like these children and these teenagers, and depending how old you are, all the way to how old you are now, these different parts of us at different ages, because different things happen along the way. You might have 1 per year, you might have 7 per year, you might have some at very specific ages, right? But I find that it's easier to understand these parts of ourselves when we think, it's so annoying that I'm scared of so many things. I hate that I'm scared of so many things. But inside of me lives a 3-year-old who's afraid of spilling milk. She's just an innocent little girl who doesn't want to get yelled at. So she's not bad. She's not trying to be difficult. She's just a little girl who doesn't want to be yelled at. And when we understand it that way, it's much easier to work with these parts. Okay, so moving on from parts, we have what's called self-energy. So self-energy is very interesting. and I'm going to give it over in the best way I can. And again, I will ask that you ask questions if there's any confusion. Self-energy is also a piece of us. And what self-energy is the piece of us that does not hold trauma. It's this neutral piece of us, and I will get into its characteristics, which will help clarify how it feels to be in self-energy and what that means. Self-energy is the gray. It's the gray to the black and white. So it's this piece of us that does not hold trauma. It does not hold the difficult experiences, and therefore it doesn't have to think in black and white. Self-energy is where we want to lead from because it has this neutrality and it doesn't hold trauma. It's able to see the gray, and it can take in what the parts have experienced and what they understand, but then it can find the gray in it. And what's so great about that is that most of life we really find there is a lot of room for gray if we can see it. So self-energy, Richard Schwartz says that there's 8 C's to self-energy, 8 qualities to self-energy, and if you're experiencing these, then you know that you're in self-energy. They are as follows, and I will have to read from my notes because no matter how many times I have tried to memorize this, I just don't seem to be able to get all 8 in a row. Okay, they are calm, curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, and creativity. These 8 C's, as you see, there's a lot of gray, there's a lot of neutral, right? There's a lot of space is how I kind of see it. So when we're in self-energy, we're really comfortable. Some people will say that self-energy is likened to the soul. It's a really connected feeling. Some people say like neshama or soul like really is self-energy versus like IF parts are more similar to like what's happening in the body, right? So it's soul and body, and we want those things to come together. They need to come together. So it's not one versus the other. When I say we want to be in self-energy, it doesn't mean that I don't want to utilize my parts or I want to ignore my parts. I never want to ignore my parts. I just want to make that very clear. I just want to make decisions from self-energy. Because it's able to find the gray, because it can listen to everybody and hear everything, I want to make decisions from self-energy, but what ultimately, and this is, spoiler alert, the ultimate goal of IFS is self-energy working with the parts together. Right? It's like the head and the body. You need them all. Okay, your arm is very important. The part that would represent the arm, whatever that would be, I don't know that it works exactly like that, but each part is crucial, but making decisions from self-energy tends to be more comfortable, I would say. How do I know though when to make decisions from where, or when to come from where? And what do I mean by that? When do I want to utilize purely parts or mostly parts? When do I want to be in self-energy? So if you know of the sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight system, right? Which we have in our body, a fight or flight system that when there's an emergency, I run. I don't ask questions, I'm running, right? That would be flight. Okay. Parts, because they are born out of crisis, out of difficulty, they are like to the symptom. And that's what we feel in our body, that adrenaline, the fast beating heart, when we're in parts. It's another clue in that I'm in parts is that sympathetic nervous system has taken over. I'm in crisis mode. So let me be super clear. If God forbid there's a fire, parts, we want the parts taking over. And we even want decisions to mostly be coming from the parts. We're not thinking here, we're going for what is the crisis manager. Manager is a kind of part who just gets things done. What do these different fight or flight parts have to say? And how do I just go with them? And then we come across a situation, let's say dating, right? As I mentioned, I work with couples a lot. And what happens if I'm not sure if I should marry this person? So that's a situation where it's not an immediate crisis. I don't want to be in a fight or flight mode. Part of me who's very worried about this decision, let's say like an anxious part, might be like, do it, don't do it, do it, don't do it, right? Very black and white thinking. And if I notice that I'm trying to make a decision like this, it's really important, and I'm hearing, in my head, I think you should do it. You got to do it. Not I think you should do it. I'm sorry, I take that one back. But you got to do this. You have to get married to this person. You have to. If you want to get married, this is the person. Let's go. These very black and white things. You have to, you must, don't marry this person. Those are parts, and they're important. Maybe they see something that's really important. We hear them out. We listen. But we don't necessarily make the decision purely from that place like we would in a crisis. What do? We get into self-energy, and then we hear out all of our parts, and then we think on it, and we might meditate and do any mindful task that works for us, and we see what feels most right in the moment. So what is self-energy? This feels most right in this moment. Not I have to, not I must, not if I don't, this is what's gonna happen. I feel most right in this moment. You know what? It feels right to marry this person right now. Do I know for sure? I can't know for sure. But I feel calm, I feel curious. That's how I'm feeling right now. And it feels most right to me. That's how we make a decision that's not crisis if we can get into our self-energy. But it's always listening to the parts first. Because a part might say to us, I don't know if this person is ambitious and that's a quality you really wanted. Huh, okay, interesting. I could look into that though. I'm gonna do that for you, part who's worried about that. I'm gonna look into that. I'm gonna see, because you're right, that is something really important to me. I'm gonna look into that. And then I look into it, right? And I can bring it back to my self-energy. I'm not sure what love is. Oh, that's a good question. I maybe will try to find out what love is and see if that's what I'm feeling and see if I need that in this moment, right? Some people might need that, some people might not. So I'm gonna look into all of that. All these worries that my parts have, that's important. Those are big questions. So we're not saying to the parts, don't make this decision. You're not part of this. You're totally part of this. I'm just not making the decision purely off of what you're saying. I'm going to listen to everybody, and then I'm going to find the gray, and then I'm going to be mindful and present. And a difference, again, between parts and self-energy is past or future. The parts are very nervous about the future and the past, again, because they've seen things, they've experienced things, they have reasons to tell us about the past, and self-energy is totally in the present. And again, for decision making, present is really what we have. So it's really the best that we can do in the moment, and therefore we want to go with that. But we want to know about the past, because ignoring the past is silly, right? And we want to think about the future. So we're taking everything into account. Again, if there's any questions, I know I just said a lot, so please feel free to write in the comments. I am going to really do my best to look at it. Okay, so what I'm going to get into now is a little bit of what the therapy looks like and why I think IFS is such a great, like what draws me to it. So I'm going to start with that actually. What draws me to utilizing IFS, what I love about it, is that there's really like no judgment in IFS, really more than other therapy modalities I've found, that it's not just, of course, a therapist is not judging the client, but, oh, someone just told me my comments are turned off? I don't think they are because I've seen some. Okay, let me know if anybody else is, I don't even know if you can let me know. Okay, I will try to figure that out. Okay. There's also a question thing that can be used, so if anybody needs, feel free to, okay, I see a comment, so it's working again. Someone just asked, so I'm just gonna pause what I was saying to answer this. Are there clues to look for that indicate we are listening to our parts or not? Yes, love that. Okay, great question. So we can tell when we're in parts, like I said, the black and white thinking, the feeling somewhat overwhelmed, maybe these physical symptoms, but how do we know if we really heard them out? So that's a lot of what the therapy is. And it's about going into the parts. So how do I know I'm going into a part? So it's hard to do this yourself. And I would say that's the great part of coming to IFS therapy, is that the therapist helps you find the part. We isolate a part that we're talking to. So let's say an angry part. Generally for most people, not the hardest one to find, right? We can tell when we're angry. So we say, okay, stay there, stay in the anger. We notice the physical of what we're feeling in the anger. We isolate our mind to focus on it, and we talk to it. We talk to the part. How do I know if I'm talking to the part or I'm talking just to talk, right? The answer, really interestingly, you don't have to believe me, but they pop in, and it feels like someone is talking to you. Not in a creepy way, it's your head is answering you. You asked a question, but you can tell if there's too long a pause and you're thinking, then what's called your thinker, which is an actual part, is just trying to answer because let's say it wants to be helpful here. But if an answer just pops in, like, how old are you? 5. What? Am I 5? That's a part saying, I'm 5. And this has really happened, and I've had it in a lot of sessions, and it's so interesting when you're able to isolate that part and talk to it, which happens a lot, and the more you get used to it, the more it happens. Because our parts want to be spoken to, right? These are little children who've experienced things inside of us that hold on to our emotions for us, and they want to be heard. So when we work with them, they do, once they trust us. So the most important thing in IFS is trust between what we call the self, right? Self-energy, and the parts. That's who we're trying to bring together. The self is always there. Sometimes it feels blocked. Someone gave me the example that it is like an eclipse where the self energy can be blocked, but it's always there. So it's accessible. So we do mindfulness techniques, we bring in the self energy, and it's the self energy that we try to get to talk to the parts. If self energy is not present, the therapist can also try to get into self energy and talk to the parts, and they will talk. As long as they trust either the therapist or the client, and hopefully both. That's what we're working on. Mostly the client is what we're working on because that's the most important, trusting yourself. As you learn to trust yourself, and it really is trusting yourself, then they work together and the part wants to tell the self. Why does the part want to tell the self so badly? So let me just explain one more concept here. The part wants to tell the self because the part is doing a job. It's constantly, each part is protecting against something else, a different experience, a different emotion. Let's say a shame part, right? Constantly helping you protect yourself from shame. So saying, oh my God, don't wear those shoes. That would be so embarrassing for us, right? When you're getting dressed in the morning, you don't even hear this part, but it's there saying, don't wear that. That would be really weird looking. It's protecting you. It's saying, when we were in second grade, we got made fun of for our shoes. We are not going to wear hot pink shoes. It did not go well for us. Let's stick with black shoes. And this is just a rapid decision that we have no idea any of this is happening. But then when we speak to this part, what it wants to do and what we work to do is say to the part, I hear you. Now you could take a break. We're giving the parts a break when we hear them. An example I use is if we're in pain. We have pain receptors that until you listen, they keep going and going and going. Why am I so angry? Some people ask. Well, you have to hear your anger, listen to it, see what it needs, right? Does it need you to honk at cars more because you're constantly letting everybody go and it's getting really upset that you're so far behind and it doesn't want to be late and it's really angry now? And it's saying to you, honk your horn, honk your horn, honk your horn, but you're ignoring this part because I don't want to be angry. But if you would sit with it for a moment and say, I'm angry, I'm really uncomfortable, I wonder what that's about. Well, I really don't like this traffic. What could I do? Well, if I would honk the car in front of me, it might move. Oh, okay. Well, if it might move, then maybe it makes sense to listen to this part. Okay, I could do that. Or sometimes we might say, it doesn't feel like something I could do here. This is not a honking area or that's not allowed. But I hear you, angry part. That makes so much sense. I wish we could do that. I totally get you. The same as if you hurt your hand, if you're bleeding, what you're going to do, you notice the blood, the pain receptors alerted you, something's going on with your hand, you look at your hand, you're bleeding, you now take a washcloth, you wash off the blood, you bandage, you Neosporin, right? And you're like, thank you, pain receptor, because if it didn't hurt me, I would never have looked down, I wouldn't notice I'm bleeding, and I could have gotten an infection. So we're grateful to our pain receptors, right? Our parts might feel like they're annoying us. I just want to drive, I don't want to be angry. Oh, but I could have cut in front of that car who anyway needs to go slow. Okay, I could have done something. So listening to my part might help me in that it has an answer for me. Or I'm just sitting with it and saying, I get the experience. Yeah, you're right. This is really annoying. Okay, we're together in this. And then angry might go away. It might say, I just needed validation that this is so annoying because I'm trying to protect you from this. But if there's nothing you could do, I hear you. But thank you for the validation. So again, it's a relationship. That's the main thing to take away from this. It's a relationship. The parts and the self are a relationship, and we're constantly working together to strengthen that relationship. And listening to the parts is crucial. How we do that, even just noticing I'm feeling this way, I might know what it's about, and I'm gonna send out to that part, like just some understanding. Compassion to the parts is one of the most important things we can do. So in understanding that, again, it's non-judgmental, which is what I love about IFS. It deals with the past, but in a way where we're really present-minded. So it's not one of those therapies where you're just getting kind of caught up in the past and repeating it and re-traumatizing. It's going into the past in little tidbits to understand what you've been through and give compassion to those pieces who hold on to your trauma for you and try to help you through. And then moving them into the present by saying, don't worry, I got this for you. And what self-energy ultimately says to the parts is, I'm the adult now. You could give that to me. You don't have to carry that anymore. I got you. And if you rather be doing something else, you can now. And when the next thing comes up and you want to tell me, I'm listening. So you don't have to worry. And it creates like a really beautiful relationship. So that's the ultimate in IFS. Again, we have our times where, you know, it's hard for us to listen to our parts, or we don't get what's beautiful about it because we haven't heard yet the story. So that's what we work on in the therapy, is hearing the stories of these parts, what they've been through, what they're trying to tell us, and how they're trying to ultimately protect us, because that is what they are trying to protect. They're trying to help in all different ways, and each part really has their way of trying to help and emote so that we understand a message. They each have their message, they each have their experience that they hold for us. And when we see it that way, it's a really beautiful thing, because it means everything I've done is just to try to help myself grow, right? And maybe, you know, it didn't happen in the exact way that I wanted to, or I'm not exactly where I want to be, but utilizing and bringing in my self energy can help me work with these parts and get there, so I can always get to a healthier place and I can always grow. Just looking at the questions, what if a part has too many bodyguards? So parts themselves are kind of like bodyguards. They do sometimes work together. So parts can be a bodyguard to a part. There is no such thing as too many, because again, they're trying to protect from something. So if it feels like there's so many blocks, it's true that sometimes a part is hard to get to, but that means that we just have to go at our pace and make everybody feel safe. And part of that is, it's frustrating, but it's understanding that everybody here is to keep us safe. I see that I have to end in like a minute or so I'm just gonna read the last question. Once the IFS is done, is the trauma gone, or can it resurface later in life? So we can take kind of the trauma out of the part by listening and going through steps, which I just don't have the time to get into exactly what the steps are, but really working with the part, it's able to give over the trauma. If something else in that vein happens, that part might still activate, but in a way where, again, it now might trust the self so much that they can work together, rather than like that first time where it's really just a part needing to work who's young and only has the resources they have. So what's really cool is that it's now our adult self helping problem solve. When we're kids, often the adults in our life just don't understand what we need, and they make mistakes, and we take it a certain way, and then, you know, our 3-year-old brain is saying, I'm never gonna spill again. Then the adult self can say, it's not that you can never spill again. It's that I want to hold for you that it was really painful what happened when you were 3 years old. You're absolutely right. And what you were taught was that not spilling is better. And that's true, but it's also okay. And I'll be there if you spill again, and I'll help you clean it up, so no worries. So I want to end on that note, just saying again, if there's anything to take away from this live, and I so appreciate, this was really nice that people are asking questions and going back and forth. Like, I feel like people are really listening. I really just want to thank the audience. But what I will say is that it's really about this self-energy and these parts, and they're all good and they're all protective. And IFS is about getting everybody inside of us, literally inside of us, to work together. And personally, I really like working with it because I find that's such a positive message that everybody inside is useful and helpful and doing their best for you, and that you just want everybody to come together. So on that note, thank you all so much for being here. I'm gonna save this to OKclarity, so if there's anybody you know who needs to watch it, hopefully I will do this correctly and it will be here. Have a good night.